want to stay a little bit longer on the topic of this Turning Point USA event that was called the People's Conference or something. And Marjorie Taylor Greene specifically spoke at it, as we already covered. But there's an extension to this story that I came across this morning, which is an account that does really great work on X called Patriot Takes, investigates and does research of right-wing extremism. It found a video from years ago of Marjorie Taylor Greene that, given a clip that I'll play for you from this speech, brutally exposes her dishonesty and embarrasses her. And that's what I want to go over here. So before getting to that Resurfaced video, super fascinating, I do want to play for you the context, which is what prompted this video to be getting shared around, which is this video Marjorie Taylor Greene was very proud to share of her speech, a part of it at this Turning Point USA People's Conference event, where she says something truly insane about January 6th. Now they've gone from saying, oh, it was bad, to it was Antifa, to it wasn't as bad as people say, to some people are being treated worse than they should for what they did on that day, to everything that happened was awesome. We love it. And that's what Marjorie Taylor Greene is now saying. Things to that effect, as you'll hear here.
They stole the election, and I was a newly elected member of Congress, but they stole President Trump's election. And heading into Washington, D.C., I thought to myself, I can't believe this. I'm from Georgia. I knew Georgia voted for Donald John Trump. I knew it.
Well, regardless of what your feelings told you, the facts didn't align with that, Marge.
And so I called up some of my friends. I called up Jim Jordan. I called up Matt Gaetz. I called up some others. And I said, we got to get together and do something about this. And then I found out that as a member of Congress, I can object to electoral college votes. And so I organized with many of my colleagues. There was well over 130 of us. I called senators and asked them to object with us on January 6th. I worked diligently on that, and I'm very proud of it. I'm proud that I objected to Joe Biden's electoral college votes on January 6th. And then I was shocked, absolutely shocked, at what happened that day. Americans protested an election. By the way, American citizens own the elections. American citizens pay for the elections. Your tax dollars pay for it. And
before getting to the worst part of this, just quickly, I do want to note, and I can't listen to a full 2 minutes and 40 seconds of Marjorie uninterrupted. It's too much. But we're going to talk about a different segment today. People who think they're super intelligent for making the distinction between a democracy and a republic, when if you dive into that for 2 seconds, you realize that's like making a distinct, or that's like saying we're not a fruit, we're an apple. So it's not as sharp of a point as a lot of people think it is. And this is similar, where you hear Marjorie say this a lot. Oh my gosh, did you know that our tax dollars like pay for stuff? So if you really follow that through, it's like we own the stuff that our government runs. Yes, that doesn't mean that we can't enforce laws. Obviously, doesn't mean you can just walk into a government building and do whatever you want to it.
American citizens have a God-given right by our Constitution to have free and fair elections. And you have the right. You have the right to bring your grievances before your government. Because guess what? You elect that government, and your tax dollars pay for that government.
So if you want to beat up police officers who represent that government, that's your God-given right.
And the American people empower that government. So if you don't feel good about the election, there's nothing wrong with protesting it. And there was nothing wrong with protesting the election on January 6th. And any Democrat, that's right, and any Democrat and any person from the mainstream media and anyone that wants to continue to shame us for January 6th can go to hell.
Very proud of herself there. So brave, isn't she? The party that used to proclaim to be for Law and Order and Backing the Blue, is now saying, don't shame us for members of our movement assaulting police officers in an attempt to overturn the rule of law and block the certification of a lawful election, attempting to block the peaceful transfer of power. And now it's woo at an event whenever a representative of this movement says, yeah, the right thing happened that day. She's even abandoned the caveat of, okay, well, if there was like really bad violence, then that I guess I'm not for. But I don't think that that was primarily what was going on, all the nonsense we've heard. But we've even gotten even more crazy from there. No longer is it, oh, but the mainstream media just focusing too much on the violence and not the good stuff, whatever the good stuff was. Now it's the violence, any of the protests surrounding what was happening in the Capitol, the objections to the certification, all of it was good, and you can't shame us for it. Well, then Patriot Takes found this video from 3 days after January 6th, and she was saying something very different.
With the Capitol, there is so many reports of Antifa being embedded in that breach on the Capitol, but I want to tell you something because I was there myself. Yes, Antifa was involved, but there were also Trump supporters involved as well. And I denounced the violence that happened at the Capitol. It was terrifying, and it shouldn't have happened because it truly did derail our objection efforts, and it put an ugly stain on what MAGA means with the Capitol.
It put an ugly stain on what MAGA means. I don't know how you could stain it any further, but it was even more stained. And it shouldn't have happened. But I thought that was their God-given right. I thought that was patriotism. I thought it's wrong for people to shame them. You're shamed? Don't shame them for doing something that is obviously horrible. And this is, I don't know how this happened, truly. I can follow through the through line of, okay, years ago, this type of right-wing media echo chamber was created. This incentive structure was facilitated by the need to justify the existence of certain ideologies. And you can follow it through, and then you just see this wild spike on the graph. Now they're saying it's good to attack police officers to try to block the peaceful transfer of power? What? And this type of story is why I don't like when people say, okay, but also talk about some other stuff. How? How do we talk about other stuff? When the core of one of the two major parties in the most powerful country on the planet, the core that's driving it right now, that is that party, MAGA, is represented by Trump and people like this, Marjorie Taylor Greene. She is beloved by the MAGA base. As she's saying, don't shame us for violently trying to overthrow the government in an attempt to prevent the lawful victor of an election coming to office. How do we just move on to, all right, now back to tax policy? How do we facilitate the implementation of tax policy if our democracy crumbles because of people like Marjorie Taylor Greene? And that's exactly what she's advocating on behalf of here. If you can't see as a MAGA person the danger of this, then as has been a reoccurring message on this show, and this isn't fun to say, I have a bunch of incredible people in my life who probably are going to vote for Trump, who I love, but you might not like, you might not love, you might not support what America is supposed to stand for as much as you thought you did. You might not like the Constitution. And the least you could do for our sake is to admit that, if you're this willing to put Trump above it. And do you remember this old video of Marjorie Taylor Greene before January 6th?
We can't allow this just to be gone, just to let it go. You can't allow it to just transfer power peacefully like Joe Biden wants and allow him to become our president, because he did not win this election. It's being stolen and the evidence is there.
Now, it should be pointed out, because I could rant all day about the thing I was saying earlier. I'll try to not get back into that. But it should be noted, I haven't used this phrase in a long time. If you're going to try to deceive us, be better at it. What is this flip-flop on the lies? Can y'all all have a meeting and at least agree on one lie you're going to tell about this? Because we have to do this weird thing where we debunk 14 different versions of the January 6th lies. Some people are saying it was all Antifa and the FBI. Okay. Some people are saying it was Trump supporters, but they didn't really do anything wrong, like what Marge is now saying, but she was previously saying it was Antifa. And the people who are being punished for what they did, that's not an example of law and order. And we hate the police who locked them up because they're patriots. But also, don't say it was Trump supporters because it was Black Lives Matter who actually did this. They were just dressed as Trump supporters. So then who are the political prisoners again that you're saying? The hostages, as Trump calls them? And then Nancy Pelosi is to blame for January 6th somehow. Or as Trump described her, Nikki Haley, Nikki Haley, Nikki Haley. And so Nancy Pelosi's to blame, but also nothing bad happened because it was all peaceful. And the things that weren't peaceful were the FBI. You, again, at least put a little bit of work into your nonsense, because that doesn't even make any sense. Or I talked to Trump supporters before that said Nancy Pelosi planned it to make Trump supporters look bad, I guess, but it was an attempt to block the certification of Biden's win. But wouldn't Nancy Pelosi want Biden's win to be certified? It just all doesn't make sense. If you think about it for too long, your brain will start leaking out of your brain. What? Out of your head is what I meant to say. Let me know what you thought of all that in the comments. I'm discombobulated. She discombobulated me. What can I say? If you want to support the work that we do, you can do so by clicking that join button below that gives you access to an extra episode of the show daily.